In 1977, Disney released an animated slash live action hybrid movie that they were hoping would capitalize and follow up on the success of Mary Poppins. It didn't. However, the original Pete's Dragon, for that is the movie to which I am currently referring, did go on to become my favorite movie to watch when I was homesick from school. Seriously, I watched it every time I was homesick. Now, in their latest attempts to capitalize on and or ruin everybody's childhood ever, Disney has created a new live action slash CG version of Pete's Dragon. But can it recapture the magic of the original? I am Johnny B, and this is Critical Hit. Alrighty, first off, I could not talk about this movie, more specifically the hits of this movie, without mentioning the fact that the CG of Elliot, and all of the animals, but especially Elliot, that's the dragon if you don't know anything about this movie, is fantastic. Like, I kid you not, he looks like a real animal, perhaps even more so than the animals in the Jungle Book. His fur looks so real to the point that it's actually kind of matted in places and tangled up, and it's got like split ends, and he looks so fuzzy and I want to pet him. And he has a very dog-like nose. In fact, he's very dog-like in general, and it's got like the weird like bumpy skin that dog noses have, and his eyes and the irises in them are impeccable, and the reflection mapping is fantastic, and oh my land, it's just great. But it isn't just the CG of Elliot that's amazing, it's also just his character as a whole. The original 1977 version, though entitled Pete's Dragon, is far more about Pete than it is about the dragon, Elliot. In this new one, they're far more equal characters, and I would perhaps even say that Elliot comes out on top. He has so much personality, and he's so playful and so winsome, and you just want to hug him and play with him, and it's wonderful. He's absolutely the star of the show. And that contributes to the fact that the movie as a whole just has this really fantastic, playful, delightful, magical attitude. I really got the sense in watching this and then in talking to my friends after the screening that this was Disney's attempt to recapture just their classic fairy tale type movies. Because even in Disney's more recent live action fairy tale remakes like Cinderella, they've kind of tried to reshift them into a more realistic slash modern slash, for lack of a better term, even though I hate this word, gritty interpretation of the story. With Pete's Dragon, they don't worry about that. They just go full on for the this is a kid and this is a dragon, and the story doesn't really make sense, but it doesn't need to because the characters are great and it's great and the movie's great. And finally, a very crucial piece of making this movie successful, the actors are all pretty stinking good. See, the script and characters are written in such a way that without the proper handling, it could very much come across as saccharine and cheesy and insincere. But because Bryce Dallas Howard and Robert Redford and Wes Bentley and Carl Urban and even the two child actors whose names I can't remember right now handle their parts so well, it really reinforces the fact that this could maybe actually happen, even though the story is genuinely kind of absurd. Oh, and also, the movie is really stinking pretty. Disney just knows how to make pretty movies. Have you seen Saving Mr. Banks? That leaves me with just two kind of little bitty crits for me to mention to you. First of all, the movie gets just a tad bit heavy-handed with pushing the fact that this is a folksy small town centered in some era that is never explained and I couldn't really figure out, but I think might be sometime in the 70s, which would make sense because that's when the original movie came out. I bet that's what they were going for. Anyway, there's a lot of like lumberjacks and wood carving and dopey local sheriffs and all of those other tropes that you often see in towns like this, and as a result, that kind of does inhibit the movie from being totally believable, but it's also pretty easy to brush all that aside in light of the fact of how good the rest of the movie is. And second crit, the villain, quote unquote, he's not really a villain, just kind of a bad guy slash just kind of selfish, doesn't really have any motivations to speak of. But again, I get the fact that this is a callback to very old school, simple, classic kids fairy tale storytelling, so not the biggest criticism in the world. Plus, Carl Urban plays the part well enough, as I already said, that he actually kind of fits and makes sense within the world of the movie. So really, neither of those criticisms is all that significant, and that leaves me with just a couple other bits that I need to mention. First of all, something that I think is just hilarious, the young girl character, Natalie is her name, has a serious case of Dora the Explorer syndrome. What I mean by that is that the director really liked to use her for reaction shots where she just stares very significantly at something that the audience is supposed to notice. I kid you not, this happens probably close to 10 times over the course of the film, but I mostly just thought it was funny and not really something to criticize. Though I suppose you could say that the overuse of reaction shots is just a bit of a detriment into the actual filmmaking of the movie, but it's a small one. And second other bit, most significantly for the entirety of this review, is I want a dragon, like really, really bad. Like generally any kind of dragon, but specifically one of whatever kind of dragon Elliot is. He is adorable and is already mentioned very playful and very fuzzy and very cool, and he can fly and he can turn invisible and he can maybe do other things, but that would be a spoiler for me to mention them. And he's like a puppy but magical, and also could defend me against anyone who ever wanted to hurt me. And I could cuddle up with him too. So all told, I really enjoyed this movie and thought it was a good movie, and so I will give it 4 out of 5 stars. It is distinctly refreshing after the mess last week that was Suicide Squad to see a movie like Pete's Dragon that knows so unabashedly what it is trying to do and really accomplishes that goal very well. It is a heartfelt kids fairy tale film about magic and family and finding your place in the world and not being alone, and it's beautiful, and I maybe only cried like twice, which I thought was a really big accomplishment for me. So please go see this, show Disney that we want more movies like this, and let's hope that the remake of Beauty and the Beast is just as good. Subscribe so that you don't miss next week's episode where I'm gonna review Kubo and the Two Strings, which looks phenomenal because Laika is the best at stop motion ever. And follow me on Twitter for all of my ridiculous antics and announcements about other videos. And then I will see you next time here on Critical Hit.